Welcome, everyone, to the Newvision Oldways podcast, a greatly ambitious journey of discovery where we can all learn to live better, mentally healthier, and more fulfilling lives. If you're just discovering us, feel free to go back and take the journey from the beginning. And if you're already a Newvision Oldways fan, welcome back and enjoy season
6.
And now, here is your host, Tony Marinaccio.
You are listening to Newvision Oldways, the podcast that explores timeless wisdom for the modern mind in a fun, relaxed, and most important, interactive way with you, the listener. I am your host, Tony Marinaccio, and let's get the episode started. Welcome, Visioneers, to another great episode of the Newvision Oldways podcast. And what an amazing interview series I have on tap for you. I have mentioned on various occasions that this podcast has no specific rules or boundaries that I need to adhere to. And if you are a dedicated listener, you know that no subject is off limits. And I am very, very proud of that. I do my best to give you as many ways as possible to improve your life. And this, my friends, may be one that you have never considered, and for many may have never even heard of. And that is the concept of medical intuition. And over the past few years, I have heard many stories about how a medical intuitive was able to pinpoint issues within the body that medical doctors could not. And that is absolutely not a knock on medical doctors at all. All of my love, respect, and admiration go to the great and honorable doctors and nurses out there. But sometimes a traditional diagnosis just doesn't get the job done. So an alternative process is needed. Truth be told, I used to be the king of skeptics with anything like this, but slowly and surely, my mind has changed course, and after extensive discussions and research, I am now falling more and more on the side of these alternative methods of finding out what may be the culprit that is causing our mental and physical problems. So enter in the picture, medical intuition researcher Tracy Poff. I reached out to her to help guide myself and, of course, you, the listener, on a journey of understanding. And if you are like me, the idea of medical intuition will come with a lot of skepticism, a lot of, how can that be? This can't be real thoughts. And I get it. Like I said, I was there too. But when you do your own research, when you open your mind to out-of-the-box ideas, you begin to understand that this practice can have a big impact on people and change lives. So I asked Tracy to come on the show and be our trusted guide to show us a world that you may not have thought to visit. So here's my call to action, a challenge, if you will. Open your mind. Cast out the skepticism and doubt and replace those with wonder, curiosity, and give yourself a chance to consider a practice that may change your life. And there is no time better to give yourself to the moment than right now by starting episode number 55 and part 1 on this series of Medical Intuition, a detective for the mind, body, and soul. So Tracy, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here, and I am excited to get this discussion going.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tony. I'm honored to be here.
So as we talked before this interview, you are talking to a complete green pea when it comes to medical intuition. And one of the things with Newvision Oldways that I'm very proud of is that we can take this podcast anywhere that we want to go. There's no limits. And going down a road like this is interesting to me because I believe that we're headed in a weird direction. I think people are finally starting to realize that just over-the-counter drugs, relying solely on a doctor is great when it needs to happen, but it also there's other areas that people can explore to find out what exactly is going on with them. So what I'd love to know is, what brought you to medical intuition? How did you get to that place? Because that's not a place that you would talk to a lot of people about and know that, oh yeah, we read about that. We looked into that. You don't hear that a lot. So how did you get there?
Well, that's a great question. And I got there very accidentally, meaning it was inadvertent, wasn't planning it. I didn't know anything about it. But so the way it unfolded a little over 15 years ago, our daughter, who was a toddler at the time, was experiencing health issues. And we began working with a doctor. And let me offer a side note. I've never been one to embrace pharmaceuticals. I like, even as a kid, if I had a headache, somebody offered me an aspirin, because that's what we did back then before Tylenol and Advil, whatever. I was no, it'll just go away. So I've just always had that tendency toward natural healing. I think I've always intuitively known that our body will heal itself. So when we began working with a doctor to help our daughter, that was our focus. We were looking for natural methods. And so we, took her suggestions for over-the-counter supplements, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, things like that. After 2+ years, I'd say about 2.5 years, our daughter her health had improved, but it was obvious there was still something missing. She wasn't herself. There was still a missing piece. And I found myself at an osteopath. For those listening who haven't heard of an osteopath, it's a doctor, but instead of an MD, which stands for medical doctor, they're a DO, doctor of osteopathy. So they actually have the same basic 4 years of medical training as a medical doctor, but then their focus is a little bit different. And so as an osteopath, I love osteopathic appointments. You basically lay down and they take their hands and they place them at different points in your body, but their focus is your spine, and they're feeling for the flow of this cerebral fluid and spinal fluid. So that's the type of appointment I was at. So I'm already off the beaten path of a medical doctor on this appointment. I was at an osteopath. And at the end of the appointment, the osteopath, as we talked about our daughter's issues and what wasn't healing, she said, well, if you want to try something different, and she literally took out a yellow Post-it pad, wrote down this name and number, and handed it to me. And she did tell me at the time she's a dowser, but I didn't know what that meant. And so it sort of went in one ear and out the other. And I'm like, okay, great. I trust this osteopath. She's given me the name of some other practitioner. So I call the number and I begin to tell the woman on the other end of the phone about she cut me off before I could tell her anything about her. She just asked for my daughter's name and her birth date. And little did I know at this time. So this is how I came into medical intuition. The person I was speaking with was a medical intuitive. I had no idea that that's what she did. I thought I was calling her to give her a little background, and I would set up an appointment, and that I would take my daughter in physically to see her, and I would find out what kind of modalities she offered, because we had tried lots of different modalities by that point. Instead, she got my daughter's name and birth date, and then just started talking, and she's asking questions. And I started to answer her questions, and I realized she wasn't asking me. She was asking, I didn't know who at the time, but sort of
Right.
just broadly. And she was getting answers. And Tony, what she was doing was she was asking questions about my daughter's organs and her physiology, and, like membrane tissue, and like just the words she was using, like she was in my daughter's body and she was getting information from what I came to learn later is what we could call divine intelligence. And by the time I got off the phone 90 minutes later, I realized she had given me, I had multiple pages of notes because I was trying to write down everything she had, because she was getting so specific, organ by organ, what she was seeing, and, chemical buildup, X-ray residue, this, that, the other. And so that was my introduction to medical intuition. It was very accidental. I did not know that's who I was calling, but my fingers are actually tingling as I tell you this, because this is what changed my worldview. Like, and when I say worldview, I mean literally the way I view the world. We walk through the world with a certain set of assumptions and beliefs. Sometimes we're not even conscious of what those beliefs and assumptions are. Often they are, I was going to say, put upon us. I don't mean that in a negative way, but we just pick them up through osmosis from our parents, from our teachers, from our school chums, from the world around us, from advertising, and so from the time we're born, we are being imprinted with beliefs. So we end up having this certain worldview, this collection of beliefs and assumptions. And when I had this phone call with this woman, it took my worldview, all my collective beliefs and assumptions, and just turned it upside down. Like, I was like, what just happened? So I can pause there because I don't want to go off too much until.
Oh, you're not. What I love about that story is, first of all, that you had that intuition that over-the-counter drugs obviously cannot always just cure everything. They're more or less a surface thing. They'll take away pain temporarily, but they're certainly not curing whatever the problems are. And maybe that's a great place to start, is with medical intuition. If you're talking to someone like me, like I said, who's very green about it, and I said to you, I'm a skeptic and I don't believe you, what's going on with this? How would you kind of go down that road with me if you've never met me before? Because truth be told, we obviously know each other a little bit, and we have met, and obviously you know a little bit about me. But if you were just talking to me, like I just said, I don't believe this. How would you react to that, and where would you begin?
Okay, where would I begin? So I will add that because my worldview was turned upside down when I had this experience with this woman, and yet every fiber of my being, every cell in me reacted when I just talked about the tingling in my fingers. That's what I felt like when I got off the phone with her. Like holy cow. So what I'm emphasizing here is that the experience of our life experience, when we have experiences, that's what teaches us. And I had this experience. So there's really nothing I could say that would convince anybody of anything. It's life experience. So having had this experience that just set me afire in a way, I had to know, like you're asking, what? How did she do this? Because I wasn't questioning if it was real or valid, because my body was telling me that it was. I was like, you may have had these experiences in your life where you just know something.
Oh, I have, yes.
So that was what I was experiencing. I knew that what I just experienced it was valid, it was real, the information she was giving me. So I should add that I acted on the information she gave me, and she also recommended a certain help protocol for my consideration. She's no doctor. She doesn't pretend to diagnose. She doesn't prescribe, but she suggested some supplements, different ones than we had tried in the past, and very what seems minor on the surface adjustments to health protocol. And I did them with my daughter, and our daughter totally shifted.
Oh, wow.
That missing piece I talked about, in 3 weeks after implementing these new changes to her health routine, I felt like our daughter was back. Like it was as if she had been gone for a few years and she was back. So that only added to my internal knowing that whatever this woman did, whatever she was seeing, was, quote, real. So to explain it to somebody, it took me years, Tony, really to understand. So when we don't have years to talk about this, so
that would be a long podcast.
A long podcast. But because I was so fascinated, like this question, well, how is that even possible? So to understand it, and I knew right away the how of it fell outside of my beliefs and assumptions, right? Because if somebody else had told me that they had this experience at the time, and I had never had such an experience, I probably, it would be somewhat dismissive at the time.
And that's a very important point, by the way.
Yeah. And this is why I say
Mm-hmm.
personal experience is vitally important, I think, in our learning.
Mm-hmm.
Like words don't teach, it's experience.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so this set me, so how, like the how of it. Now, 15 plus years later, I can give a quick explanation, but it took me years to unravel. But the quick explanation would be, first, we have to talk about paradigms and worldviews. So if one has a worldview that says nothing is real unless I can measure it with existing instruments,
Mm-hmm.
then they're going to have a hard time understanding medical intuition. So step one would be, let's set aside any existing beliefs and assumptions that see the world as purely physical.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, let's pretend that there's another worldview that says instead of things being physical only, that they're energetic first. So anything physical, let's pretend, this is my belief now, but to those who've never considered this, that anything you're seeing physical, your computer, a lamp, a picture, that it was thought first. And that's not a big leap to make. Somebody had to think of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we take that back another layer of thought, like where do thoughts come from? Right. So anyway, I do now believe in a divine intelligence, an organizing principle. So sorry, let me condense this. So if we start with that potential worldview that things are energy first, thought being energy, I'm using those interchangeably here,
Mm-hmm.
interchangeably, but I'm going to say thought is energy. So if everything's energy first, we can view the world as like a soup, if you will, of energy, and out of which physical items come. So if we have this worldview where everything's energy first, then we could also add to the belief system here what ancient wisdom and philosophy from, let's say, India and thought systems like Buddhism, you know, they that's consistent with their worldview, that there is a source, and I'm going to say of energy, but we can use different words for that. And when we're talking about humans, I would tend to say, instead of energy, I'd say it's spirits. So, but anyway, so we have this energetic soup from which everything comes. And I'm saying everything comes, meaning I do believe there's one absolute source. So if, again, this is a series of ifs and assumptions, but that's just like anybody's worldview. It's just based on a series of ifs and assumptions. So in my worldview of ifs and assumptions, I do believe that there's a sea of consciousness, this soup of energy. And if we start with that paradigm, then it's not a leap to then understand what happened in that phone call I was describing. This woman was simply dipping into that consciousness, into that sea of energy, into that soup. She was simply connecting with divine intelligence, with that, I'm going to call it a soup again, like this swirling soup of energy from whence all comes. So I said that was going to be a short answer. That wasn't.
That's okay. You're doing great.
But it's really paradigmatic. I mean, that's why I'm talking about this, because you can't get there in an understanding from a position of nothing I can't measure exists. So this sea of energy is not measurable with the human instruments we have today. But people like this woman I was referring to on this phone call, a professional intuitives have developed their senses so that they can dip into this sea of energy and get information. So that's sort of the bottom line. find the broad paradigm shift that would need to happen for somebody to understand how medical intuition works.
And so you kind of lead into, though, and I will tell you this really quick. So a lot of the stuff that I talk about on this podcast is getting in touch with your inner self. And I know this is slightly different than what you're talking about, but it kind of makes sense in the end, I hope. So I use techniques, we talk about mindfulness a lot. I talk about the Tao Te Ching. I talk about, and we're going to be getting into Buddhism and all those types of things. So there's so many things yet to go. But I talk about those things because I believe with the world that we live in being so busy and so chaotic at times and so stressful to a lot of people, they forget to listen to themselves. And so in a slightly different version of what you're saying, I just think people forget that they can actually listen to themselves and try to not figure out what's wrong with themselves like a medical doctor would, but listen to yourself and understand what's going on in your own body or your own mind. Because I did a show called The Mind, Body, and Soul Connection. And I think that's your train of thought there, where people just have to be open to understanding different things and letting it come in and kind of envelop them a little bit. And obviously using that feeling to kind of go a little bit further. And until you have that feeling, and I could be saying this wrong, but until you have that feeling, you're not going to really probably give yourself to the moment. And so the Integratron that we had experienced out in Palm Springs area, or actually Joshua Tree, I really went into that with the mindset of, and I talked about that a couple episodes ago, that I went into it with a mindset of I'm going to give myself to the moment, which is very hard for me. And so I think unless you give yourself to the moment and let whatever is happening happen, you may be the skeptic forever, like you had, I think, maybe kind of alluded to. So is that kind of is that a good way to put it?
Yeah. Yes. Giving yourself over. I love that. Giving yourself over to the moment. What I feel that to be is letting go of the logical mind.
Mm-hmm.
So to discern what's going on inside of ourselves, this inner voice you were talking about, to hear that inner voice, in my experience, it means letting go of logic, letting go of the intellect. That could be called, scientists have said that's the left side of the brain,
Mm-hmm.
right side of the brain, although I think the brain's always working together, but some would say the right side of the brain is the more creative, expansive, intuitive side. So for those familiar with that lingo, we would say you want to let go of using the left side of your brain, letting go of the logic when we want to attune to what's inside of us. Because logic in the intellect is all about data, like building a pattern recognition, knowledge base. Where have I seen that before? It's our logical brain is A plus B equals C linear kind of a mechanism. But intuition and being present to the moment and attuning to our inner voice is nonlinear. It's going in with no expectation. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have a pattern to recognize because I'm in this present moment, and this present moment hasn't happened before. So it's an entirely different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So this woman I was referring to, the medical intuitive on the phone call, that's the mindset she has when she's doing a reading, as she was on my daughter. It was not coming from a place of logic or intellect. It was a free space of, I don't have any answers. I don't know. I'm just attuning to the moment. And in her particular case, as I mentioned, the osteopath told me, and then it came back later, she was a dowser, and I had to look up what that meant. Basically, the way this woman attunes to the sea of information is through using a pendulum. And again, that's something, would I have believed that 20 years ago? I don't know. But I witnessed it and felt it, whether it's a pendulum, a tarot card, an oracle card, a feather, whatever. It's just a tool to get into this mind space we were just talking about, where we're not in the logic, linear way of thinking, because we don't want to be thinking. Intuition is non-thinking. It's non-linear. So sometimes it's helpful to use a tool, like one of the items I just mentioned, because it gives our mind something to focus on. So it keeps the left brain busy while the right brain is receiving and getting information. So tools are just, yeah, I think they keep the left brain busy.
So Dowser, though, just to be clear, because you mentioned it a couple times, Dowser is, and how would you explain that?
Someone who uses a pendulum.
Okay, so I thought that's what.
Is like it hangs from some sort of a chain,
Mm-hmm.
and then there'll be a pendant at the bottom of it, and it swings. People can think of like a grandfather clock has a pendulum, right? So this would be an item that one holds between their fingers and lets hang down freely. And the pendulum responds to the question. So if I said, and I've tested myself, it's when I'm in that free open space and my thinking mind is not present, I'm able to let go of the thinking mind. I've had great success with using a pendulum. But for me personally, most of the time, I have a hard time getting my thinking brain out of the way. But
I think everybody does. Yeah, that's the problem.
Our society, that's, how we're brought up is, and I remember as a child being told, think first, think before you say, think, right? So much thinking, but then we have to let go of thinking and when we want to intuit something or hear our intuition. But sorry, I did wanted to complete.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
If people aren't familiar with them, so you've got a pendulum or a pendant hanging on the bottom of a chain, and one hand is holding the chain at the top, and you would ask a question such as, or actually, it's better to make statements, not questions. So because some would say there's truth and there's non-truth, right? So the pendulum will swing yes to truth, no to non-truth. That's a whole nother subject about the semantics there. But anyway, so if I'm holding a pendulum and I say, my name is Tracy, the pendulum should swing in a direction that I've come to know where that pendulum means yes. So maybe that's side to side. If I say, my name is Sarah, then it should give me a no. And the pendulum will automatically swing in the opposite direction, say north to south instead of east to west. So that's what a pendulum does. It responds to truth. So if the statement is true, it will respond accordingly.
Mm.
And there's another, so I'm just going to take this moment to mention it. There's another method to test truthness, kinesiology. So kinesiology, the way that works is one person puts out their arm straight to the side. Another person would put their fingers, the outstretched arm, and the muscles will respond to truth. So same thing. If I had my arm out and a second person had their fingers on my wrist, and I said, my name is Tracy, what they will experience and they'll feel in their fingers on my wrist is a strengthening of all the muscles in my arm.
Mm.
If I said, my name is Sarah, they'll experience a weakening of the muscles in my arm.
Fascinating.
So, yeah, I find it fascinating. And you can use, I love this subject. You can also use your body as a pendulum. So I've done this before when I need a yes, no, should I take this supplement? Should I not? Like, we can get into homeopathy. That's something I use frequently. So one can stand up straight and ask their question or make their statement. Is the statement true? And if usually it's forward back, but it could be different based on the person. But let's say forward means it's true. So I've done this too. You stand up straight, make my statement. My name is Tracy. And I'll feel a slight leaning forward. And if the statement is false, there's a slight leaning backwards.
So obviously you're talking about energy, right? I would assume.
Yes.
So, okay. So that's always been a fascinating area for me right there is just, I've always believed that part of things. There's obviously an energy that comes. You can tell when somebody walks into a room and the room changes immediately. So I'd like to think that's me, but Probably not. But the way I look at it is you could sense something. It's like when you don't see somebody from behind, but you could sense them being there. It's sort of like that. So maybe if you want to get into a little bit of the energy aspect of it, because I think that's a part of it that I think that's going to tail into when somebody goes to see a medical intuitive, what they're going to expect and how they're going to get to whatever results they're going to get to. So maybe you could touch on the energy aspect of it, because I think it's a perfect place to kind of lead into what someone might experience when they go see a medical intuit. What an amazing way to end part 1 of this series with a cliffhanger question. And I hope you are enjoying an episode like this. And I intend on doing more wonderful interviews such as this one with medical intuition researcher Tracy Poff. And in the next episode, we dig even deeper into what anyone can expect when visiting a medical intuit and so much more. So please do not miss the second part of this series coming very soon. So, what did you think of this episode or any of the episodes? I would love to find out. And here is where to get a hold of the show and let us know. These are in the show notes, but as always, here they are. There is a support link in the show notes and on the newvisionoldways.com website that you can click on that will allow you to donate to the show and show your support. By donating what you can, it will allow me to book guests like Tracy in this episode and cover costs. It is very safe and anything will help. You can cancel at any time. You can also message the show from each episode on your various platforms. Just look for the send us a text message link. And if that doesn't work for you, you can email us at newvisionoldways@gmail.com. And you can find us on what was Twitter, now X, at Newvision Old Way. Remember, there's no S on that one, at Newvision Old Way. And you can check us out on the Newvision Oldways YouTube channel. Just type in Newvision, which is one word, Oldways, one word, and please subscribe. It is free and will show support for the show. It really means a lot and will help grow the show on YouTube. Find us on Facebook, same thing, Newvision Oldways Podcast, and you should easily find us. And as a reminder, these are still growing platforms for us and expanding all the time. So we need your help to get the flow going with the community. And last but not least, if you could do me a huge favor and subscribe to us, like us, follow us, leave a review on whatever platform you found us on. That would be so appreciated. That will also help secure guests that we will be booking in the future. So welcome to the middle of season 6, and I have a lot to cover yet this season. So thank you for listening, and I cannot wait to get your input. And I also cannot wait until we get together for the next episode of Newvision Old Ways. Until then, stay true to yourself, stay informed, and stay empowered.
But the most important thing is...
This episode and all the episodes of Newvision Oldways podcast have been written, engineered, and produced by Tony Marinaccio and TKM Productions.